When my daughter Emma was born, I held her in my arms and made a promise. No matter what happened in life, I would always protect her, support her, and stand behind her dreams. For 30 years, I kept that promise. I worked double shifts, skipped vacations, and lived in the same modest house long after I could have afforded something nicer. Every extra dollar went toward giving Emma opportunities one never had. When she wanted to attend an expensive university, I paid the tuition. When she wanted to start her own business, I refinanced my home to help fund it. And when she and her fiancé Daniel found the perfect house but couldn't qualify for the mortgage alone, I co-signed the loan and quietly paid most of the monthly payments after Daniel lost his job. They always promised it was temporary. It'll only be for a few months, Dad. A few months turned into almost 4 years. Every month, I transferred the money without asking questions. I wasn't buying their gratitude. I was simply helping my daughter. Then one spring afternoon, I saw something that stopped me cold. A wedding announcement on social media. Emma and Daniel had gotten engaged. The date was only 6 weeks away. I smiled. Then I waited for my invitation. 1 week passed. Then another. Friends began asking what I planned to wear. Neighbors congratulated me. I bet you're excited to walk your daughter down the aisle. I laughed politely, very excited. Inside, I wondered why the invitation hadn't arrived. Finally, I called Emma. She sounded distracted. Oh, about the wedding. There was an awkward silence. We decided to keep it intimate. Understand, I replied. But immediate family is still invited, right? Another silence. Then she quietly said something I'll never forget. Dad, Daniel's parents aren't comfortable with certain family dynamics. What does that mean? It just means it would be easier if you didn't come. I felt my chest tighten. Easier for who? It's complicated. No, yen suorat sufli. It's actually very simple. She didn't deny it. She simply repeated, I am sorry. That was the end of the call. I wasn't angry. I was devastated. 30 years of sacrifice. Countless sleepless nights. Everything I had done. Yet somehow, there wasn't room for me at my own daughter's wedding. The wedding photos filled social media the following weekend. Everyone smiled. Luxury venue. Designer dresses. Professional fireworks. Champagne towers. I looked through every picture. There wasn't a single empty chair that could have been mine. That night, I opened my banking app. The automatic mortgage payment was scheduled for the following morning. I stared at the screen for nearly 10 minutes. Then I canceled it. No dramatic speech. No event. No hateful message. I simply stopped paying someone else's responsibilities. A month passed. Then my phone buzzed. Emma. Her text was only 5 words. The mortgage payment is due. No hello. No apology. No question about how I was doing. Just a reminder. I read it twice. Then I typed a single sentence. I assumed you wanted an intimate mortgage too. I pressed send. The typing bubble appeared immediately. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally she called. Her voice was shaking. Dad, this isn't funny. I agree. We could lose the house. I know. You promised you'd help us. I also thought I'd be part of your family. She became defensive. This has nothing to do with the wedding. It has everything to do with the wedding. You can't punish us financially. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply no longer paying bills for people who decided I wasn't family. Silence. Then she whispered, Daniel says you're being manipulative. I almost laughed. For 4 years, I've quietly paid your mortgage. I asked for nothing. The one moment I hoped to share with my daughter, I wasn't even invited. If that's manipulation, then we define love very differently. She hung up. Over the next week, messages kept coming. Some were polite. Others weren't. Daniel accused me of trying to ruin their marriage. His parents claimed I was selfish. One relative even posted online that I cared more about money than family. None of them mentioned the years I had carried their financial burden. People only noticed generosity after it disappeared. Then one evening, there was a knock on my front door. Emma stood outside. Alone. She looked exhausted. She hadn't come to argue. She had come because reality had finally caught up with her. We sat in silence for several minutes. Then tears filled her eyes. I never wanted to hurt you. I waited. She continued. Daniel's parents thought you weren't sophisticated enough. They believed you'd embarrass them. They kept saying the wedding was about appearances. So you agreed. She nodded without looking at me. I told myself we'd celebrate with you later, but I never realized how cruel it really was. I quietly asked, "When exactly were you planning to tell me?" She couldn't answer. Instead, she cried. For the first time in weeks, I saw my little girl again. Not the successful business owner. Not someone's wife. Just my daughter. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I chose peace with everyone else instead of standing beside the one person who always stood beside me. I believed she meant it. But apologies don't erase consequences. "I forgive you," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't automatically restore trust." She nodded. "I know. I don't expect you to keep paying." For the first time, she accepted responsibility. She and Daniel sold expensive furniture, canceled luxury vacations, picked up extra work. They learned to live within their own means. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Months later, Daniel knocked on my door. He looked uncomfortable. "I owe you an apology." I invited him inside. He admitted his parents had pressured both of them. He admitted he stayed silent because confronting them seemed harder than hurting me. I failed as a husband, and I failed as a son-in-law. I appreciated the honesty, not because it erased the past, but because accountability is where healing begins. A year later, Emma invited me to dinner. No photographers, no expensive venue, no speeches, just family. Before dessert, she handed me a framed photograph. It wasn't from her wedding. It was an old picture. She was 6 years old, sitting on my shoulders at the county fair. On the back, she had written, "The man who carried me long before I could walk alone." I smiled. That picture meant more than any wedding invitation ever could. People often confuse love with unlimited sacrifice. They believe that real parents should give endlessly without expecting respect in return. But love without respect eventually becomes exploitation. Helping someone isn't the same as enabling them. Supporting family doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is quietly step back and allow people to experience the weight of the responsibilities they've placed on others. My daughter eventually rebuilt our relationship, not because I kept paying her bills, but because she finally understood something far more valuable. A parent's greatest gift isn't money. It's unconditional love paired with self-respect. And sometimes the strongest act of love isn't writing another check. It's teaching the people you love that respect can never be optional. A few weeks after that dinner, something unexpected happened. Emma called me one Saturday morning. "Dad, are you busy?" "Not today. Would you help me fix the fence in our backyard?" I smiled, not because she needed help, but because, for the first time in years, she wasn't asking for money. She was asking for my time. When I arrived, Daniel was already outside wearing old jeans and work gloves. There were no awkward speeches. He simply walked over, extended his hand, and said, "Thank you for coming." The three of us spent the entire afternoon replacing broken fence panels. We laughed. We argued over measurements. We ordered pizza when we got hungry. For the first time since before the wedding, it felt like family again. Not perfect, just honest. As the sun began to set, Emma looked at me and quietly asked, "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Did you ever think about cutting me out of your life?" I looked at her for a long moment. "There were days I wondered if you had already cut me out of yours." Her eyes filled with tears. "I deserve that." "But no," I continued. "I never stopped loving you. I just stopped allowing myself to be taken for granted." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I understand that now." A few months later, they refinanced their mortgage in their own names. The bank officially removed me from every document. When I received the confirmation letter, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not because I no longer cared, but because helping someone should never become a lifetime obligation. Freedom allowed our relationship to become something healthier. Instead of discussing bills, we talked about birthdays. Instead of bank transfers, we shared family dinners. Instead of expectations, we built trust. Nearly 2 years after the wedding, Emma invited me to another ceremony. This time, it was the birth of my first granddaughter. When I walked into the hospital room, Emma smiled through exhausted tears. She placed the tiny baby into my arms. "Dad," she whispered, "meet Grace." I looked down at the sleeping little girl. She wrapped her tiny fingers around mine. At that moment, every painful memory seemed smaller. Not forgotten, just no longer powerful enough to define our future. Emma handed me a folded envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. It read, "Dear Dad, I spent years believing success meant pleasing everyone around me. In doing that, I disappointed the one person who never asked me to be anything except myself. You taught me that love is generous, but self-respect is priceless. Thank you for forgiving me when I hadn't earned it. I promise Grace will grow up knowing exactly who her grandfather is. With all my love, Emma." I couldn't speak. I simply hugged my daughter. Daniel quietly walked over. "I've been thinking," he said, "when Grace gets married someday." Emma interrupted him with a smile. "If Grandpa isn't in the front row, there won't be a wedding." We all laughed. Years later, people often asked how we repaired our family after everything that happened. They expected some dramatic answer. There wasn't one. Healing didn't happen because someone wrote a bigger check. It happened because everyone finally accepted responsibility for their choices. Respect replaced entitlement. Gratitude replaced expectation. And love became something freely given instead of quietly demanded. Life has a strange way of teaching us difficult lessons. Sometimes people don't recognize your value while you're carrying their burdens. They only realize it when they have to carry those burdens themselves. If this story has taught me anything, it's this. Never confuse kindness with weakness. Never mistake forgiveness for permission. And never believe that setting healthy boundaries means you love your family any less. Because real love isn't measured by how much you're willing to sacrifice. It's measured by the respect that remains when the sacrifices finally stop. That, more than anything, became the greatest inheritance I could ever leave my family.